The Accidental Entrepreneur is brought to you with the help of our sponsor, AWeber, the world's leading small business email marketing and automation service provider. Since 1998, AWeber has helped more than 1 million small businesses and entrepreneurs through its suite of web-based email marketing, automation tools, and education. AWeber, the best option when it comes to marketing your business. The podcast is also brought to you by the Alternative Board. Since 1989, the Alternative Board, or TAB, has been one of the leading peer advisory and business coaching organizations for independent business owners and CEOs across the world. By facilitating peer advisory boards, private one-on-one coaching, and strategic planning services, TAB helps business owners improve their businesses in ways that change their lives. And be sure to connect with our affiliate sponsor, GSM Growth Agency. They're boosting e-commerce businesses to 6 and 7 figures in revenue and cover everything from ads and social media influencers to making your website better. GSM Growth Agency focuses on taking businesses from startup success to bigger success, going above and beyond to make sure growth sticks around. They're all about cool ideas, lasting partnerships, and making your mark in the e-commerce world. And be sure to support the podcast by ordering some logo merchandise from our online store. Listen to all of our sponsors' commercials later in this episode and follow their links in the show notes to learn more about their products and services. All right, welcome back, everybody, to another show. I am talking to Victoria today about, well, she's a powerhouse. We're going to talk about, her branding and everything that she does, motivational speaking. She's a corporate executive. I love shows like that. And hopefully we can keep her attention. I know she told me that she flew in really early in the morning this morning from New York, but she's giving us her time. So I appreciate that, Victoria. If you are listening on your favorite audio directory, Apple, Spotify, Google, whatever, Amazon, leave us a 5-star review whenever you can. If you're watching us on YouTube, like the channel, subscribe, so we can keep connecting with guests like Victoria and others. And let's get on with today's show.
The information provided in these episodes is for entertainment purposes only. It is not a guarantee of success or to be construed as advice of any kind. You should always seek advice from local licensed professionals before making any decisions.
The dictionary defines an entrepreneur as a person who organizes and manages any enterprise, especially a business, usually with considerable initiative and risk. People often start a business without much choice, perhaps due to a job loss or just being dissatisfied at work, and they come up with an idea they just know can be successful. They become entrepreneurs by accident. That is to say, their success or failure happens by accident, not with intention. My name is Mitch Beinhaker. I'm a corporate attorney and a business advisor. You're listening to The Accidental Entrepreneur, my podcast about how to achieve success on purpose, not by accident. Join me along with our monthly guests, where we share our knowledge and help you get a hold of your business. And now on to today's episode. All right, Victoria, you can hear me well?
I can.
Okay, good. If you can't, tell me. Thanks for joining me. I know we connected through Podmatch, which was my mistake finding your bio, so I apologize for that. And I find a lot of really cool people on Podmatch. But I read, usually I'm looking for entrepreneurs and they're just doing the entrepreneurial thing and whatever. And I read your bio and you have a really interesting background. You also seem to have a lot of energy, motivation, you're branding yourself. And I think a lot of people miss that, but like what their opportunity is to brand themselves when it comes to promotion and business and whatever. But maybe we go back and talk about, where you're from, what your background is in business and corporate, how you got into corporate, and then I'll let you take it from there. Sound good?
Yeah, sure. I'd love to.
All right, let's hear about it.
I'll try not to make this a 2-hour episode by going too far back or too many details, Mitch. But so your listeners might hear a slight bit of an accent. I do originally hail from Canada, so only when I say the words out and about will it be the telltale sign. So born and raised there, and the journey that I'm in is very, very you talk about intention, and I use a phrase all the time, strategic intentionality. So my strategic intentionality from childhood was to be like Mitch and be a lawyer. However, I started working at age 11. I come from extremely modest, socioeconomic positions. My adoptive family was not very well off. I never had to worry about food or clothing, but that was it. So I started working for anything extra. And by 14,
That
I'd
was
already be in Canada. Yeah, I
okay.
worked
So I
in
don't
a
know if
hair.
that's a violation of the child labor laws, but 11 in the
I
United States
don't
a
know
little
if
young.
I think it's now like 14 or I think it's 14 to
Right.
now
It
because
was
I was
14 here. Yeah.
yeah. Yes, I worked at 11 in a hair
Okay.
salon doing everything except the
Oh,
actual styling.
nice.
And then at 14, my first leadership role, I was working in a shoe store while I was in high school, and I got
Okay.
promoted to be the assistant manager. So here I was at 14 with like leading people who were 20 or 30 years my senior. I graduated.
Okay.
Yeah, I know. So that was my first sort of foray into
That's either a
leadership.
charitable store or that's a testament to you. So
Yeah,
one
I think it's because I was a
or
great
the other.
salesperson, and that's a mistake
Yeah,
many people make in business. You promote your top performer into
I
leadership
know.
doesn't necessarily equate.
It
Uh,
usually is not the case, and then you lose your best salesperson. That's a
yes,
combination of two
yeah,
problems. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Good point.
So
Okay.
I went off. I graduated early, so I went off to at 16. I went off to university with plans on, as I said, being a lawyer. But I then
Okay.
moved, and I was working for a bank in their contact center, much more
Okay.
flexible, working around my school schedule, and was
And
promoted
this is
into
all in Canada.
all in
All in
Canada,
Canada.
all in
Okay.
Canada. I was relocated to the U.S. in 2006 for the first time. So
Oh, okay.
until up until my 20s, I was in Canada in a few different cities. And yes, I
Okay.
work for a bank and running operations. I'm a voracious learner. I want to challenge the status quo. So I took about every additional course, even though I was in university at the time. I got my securities license and ended up leading the last role I held in banking was running a discount brokerage contact center operation for them. And then
Okay.
they relocated me across the country to, do this work. And I thought, I guess I'm going to take a year off before I go to law school. And if I love Toronto, I got moved from Western Canada across to Toronto. Then I said, I'll go to school there. Otherwise, I'll move back out west and I'll go to university and my law degree. And I did neither of those things. I followed
Okay.
my passion. I stayed in Toronto at that point, and I continued down the corporate path. And then within a few years after that, I got recruited into my first C-suite role. Although what I should
Okay.
say, we
Yeah.
talked to a lot of your listeners being entrepreneurs, I've also I've got this weird dynamic where I've built and bought businesses in addition to being this like big corporate executive. And I've
As
also
a,
been,
I won't call it a hobby, but like as a side hustle, you're investing. You're investing in businesses, involved with businesses, buying, selling, whatever, in addition to your corporate job.
correct.
Yeah. I mean, when there's 24 hours in a day, why like waste some of them sleeping?
Yeah, that's
Right? Yeah. Okay. So let me ask you this question, 'cause I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but why do you think, right? You're a young person. There's a lot of people that are young and they're ambitious, whatever. So why do you think you were able to push the curve so quickly along the corporate route? It's not easy to do, and you're a woman too. I don't know what it's like in Canada, but women are constantly being overlooked and mistreated in the corporate world. So
yeah.
what looking back, like why do you think?
So I had some pretty significant like trauma and adversity in my earlier years before I was adopted. So I
Okay.
think a combination like that. Now, so I'm extremely resilient. I
Yeah.
sign a lot of my social media posts, and the first book I wrote was that one was a co-authored book, is entitled Unstoppable.
Okay.
And I think you can develop resilience. It's like a muscle, but I also think there's an element of it that's in your DNA. Fight or
Okay.
flight. I'm a
Right.
fighter. And so I
Yeah.
had
Some
the
people
need
don't.
and the circumstances to fight as a child, but also other things. I mean, some small things you might laugh at, but I'm 5'8", and I hit my height by the time I was or 10 or 11. So I was always the kid in the school
So
photos
you were
that was the
taller
middle.
than
I was
everybody, right?
always the middle back. I remember
Yeah.
being in grade 4 and I was taller than my teacher. So I've got this like I've always had this big person complex, even though I didn't grow any taller than that. I developed in all facets quite early. So actually, people always thought I was older. And when I got into my first executive role at 24, I remember lying about my age in the opposite direction. Like, what woman in particular does
Right.
that?
Saying you're older, right?
Right. And
Yeah.
so I think I came with confidence. I'm not a fan of fake it till you make it. However, with confidence, that was the one area I've always believed. And because confidence in most people's minds equates to competence. So I showed up
Yeah.
confidently. I started working so
100%.
young that I had a lot of experience. And I was the unstoppable nature for me is once I set my mind on a goal or objective, nothing is stopping me from achieving it.
Right. It's not like it's just when, it's not if, it's just how. It's not if
Exactly.
it's going to happen, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, those are great answers. I think that confidence definitely comes with competence. I think that people like and are attracted to confident people. Obviously, I mean, that's kind of an obvious statement, right? But I think a lot of younger people, and maybe it is because of the adversity you faced, whatever, and it made you a more resilient, stronger constitution or whatever. I think a lot of our young people don't have that these days. They're early 20s, and, they're just getting started. Like they're just kind of seeing the world and coming out of their shell. And I get, yeah, good answer. I mean, you got to experience it earlier than most people, I guess. Somebody else told me that recently too. I said, how do you travel the world and do all this stuff? She goes, well, first of all, I'm 6 foot. And I was like, okay, well, that would do a lot. Nobody's going to mess with you when you travel alone around and you're taller. But yeah, I mean, look, everything is perception, right? In terms of how you perceive things. Okay, so I'm sorry to interrupt you. That was a good question I wanted to ask you.
No problem.
Okay, so where were we at this point?
Yeah, so I went into I'm a big believer in taking calculated risks. And so I was then working for almost 6 years in banking, which in Canada there's only 5 big Canadian banks, and they're some of the largest employers in the country. And I made a decision. I got recruited to go and be the chief operating officer for a contact center outsourcing organization at age 24. And I was
explain what that is.
A chief operating officer or what the
content.
So yeah,
the
world of BPO, business process outsourcing. Companies look to outsource pieces of their business because it's not their superpower, core competency, and to save money. And so think of customer service, technical support, help desk, and way back when it was allowed, telemarketing. So I was running and some data entry, back office stuff. And it was a stretch role for me. And I think the company recruited me because they had banking clients, and I'd worked at 2 of the big banks. And I had significant contact center experience running very, very large scale operations. So I stepped into that role. And it was a massive stretch role for me and a huge risk. I was leaving a safe environment. Now we know there's no safety necessarily in or security in business. I was also a brand new mother. My first child, he was only a few months old. So here I am going into this like unknown as an executive, where I was going to be on call our client that we operated 24/7. So just in this whole new world. But again, I like to challenge myself. And there was a dynamic to it too that I just love, Mitch. And I think it's where a lot of my career has been ever since, of serving in a B2B environment, because you've got this other layer of complexity between you're serving the clients who write your, that pay the bills, and you're serving either their customers or their employees. So there's this added level of complexity that comes with it. And I loved it. And so much of my career, it subsequently has been in that space. The first 5 to 8 years in that executive space was still in private companies. And then ever since, I've been in predominantly Fortune 100 companies, leading either markets for a company or a large business unit.
Okay. All right. So you were basically outsourcing stuff for them to save them money, to make it more, whatever.
Yeah. And it's grown. I mean, it's an amazing business. And so it grew into what was purely, companies would say our mess for less and just hand it over. And now it's expanded, and it's really much around how do you talk about transformation. So I've grown into consulting, technology enabled, and then the actual services that are being delivered. And so there's been a much greater focus on the technology side of it, the automation of processes, chatbots, even if you think about over the last couple of years.
Right. Yeah, no, AI is nuts right now. It's like every service I have is sending me an email about the new AI services that they have. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I don't need them all, but yeah. So, and somebody got to pay for. So it's like, well, I don't know if I need that, but yeah. So tell me about also the things you were doing on the side, the entrepreneurial stuff. Has that developed over time?
Yeah, well, so I realized I'd been quoting a number for a long time over the number of mergers and acquisitions I've been involved in. And when I was trying to go back and recount, I'm like, wait, I forgot my first one. So I was an actor in my teenage years and through school. And I had a casting agency that represented me. They'd moved from Vancouver. Vancouver is a big market in Canada. And they'd moved
Okay.
into Calgary, which is where I had grown up. And the two guys who founded it wanted to move back to Vancouver. So I bought the casting agency. And so that I was
Oh,
20.
sure.
So I was
Yeah.
20 years old. So that was
Okay.
my first one. I then followed passions. I built a natural Bath and Body Works business because I enjoyed it. And you can't make a
Okay.
single bar of soap. You need to make 10 at a time, like a loaf. And so it started with too much product that I gave away as gifts and everyone loved. And I turned it into a business and I sold it years later. And
Okay.
then opportunistically, I've seen things come along. So in 2017, I bought a data and analytics company
Okay.
and ended up running it as its CEO, only because I was in talks with a couple of other companies to go in and be executives there, and they took a while. So I'm like, well, I'm going to run it for now.
Yeah.
And so that's always been. I've got this like very entrepreneurial spirit, even. And quite frankly, even within the large corporations, I've built whole new business units within some of these large corporations. But I've
Yeah.
always liked a little bit of a safety net. So that's why I do both.
Yeah. No, look, that's one of the challenges of companies. They want their executives to think like entrepreneurs, right? Not like old world, executives. I'm curious, at 20, maybe you didn't know this at 20. So you buy a casting agency. I'm not sure how you did it, but what are you buying? Like what? You're buying the talent, the contracts with the talent.
You're
What are you
buying
desk and a
you're buying the relationships with the casting and film contacts. You're doing
So
that.
how
Now, I
do
also
you buy
had like,
that transfer to you? Like, I mean,
yeah, I mean, so I already
how do
had
they?
I was working in it with them as not only they represented me as an actor, but I also helped them with some education for people that were coming. They're new. They had lots of extras. And by the way, it's
Uh-huh.
like a whole bit like business. You'd have to go through a course. I would teach the course and whatever. Like there's things you need to know for sure. And you
Yeah.
need your headshots and whatever. So there's some money coming in the door. Can't guarantee you're going to get cast, but
Right.
the one of the guys who I bought it from, his sister was a massive like producer in all across Canada. So I maintain the relationships. I also had a very solid book of people to represent as
Yeah.
well. So you're
Okay.
buying the
Good
goodwill.
answer.
That's it. There's no
Yeah.
assets.
I mean, right. I mean, there's no hard assets, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. So was it difficult being 20 to buy a business? Like, did you know anything about, due diligence, or how do you do? I
I
mean, you're
didn't
already
then.
working there.
I
So
was working
just
in it, so that helped quite a bit. I had a very good behind the scenes, so I didn't need to do further like due diligence. And I was fortunate in terms of negotiations because I knew they were prepared to walk away from it, so I could offer them
right.
almost whatever I wanted.
Yeah,
Which
because
is what I
whatever they were getting for you was more than they were going to get
yeah
without you. Right?
yes
They're getting zero without you.
yeah. Now I've been a part of 40 probably around 40 merger and acquisition or related transactions since. 20 have been either ones I've personally done or for the companies I've worked for, and then the others have been in the support of other clients in which I've supported them with their integration activities, helping them with their restructure, etc.
Got it. So what would you say are not one, but some of the more challenging aspects of, growth and scale and acquisition? I mean, if you're helping these clients, you must see it all the time.
Actually, the biggest challenge to their success is poor change management. And
right.
not in most people think
Yeah.
change management is just like communications around the project management, the plan itself, but not
Mhm.
like a very different level of communication. And so I've spent years over the last 5 or 6 years. I worked between IBM and Accenture, both of whom do large scale work, whether it's technology implementations or outsourcing. They both, even IBM,
Right.
you think of pure tech, but they also have a pure strategy like division as well. So I recall saying that, we needed to, as we thought about doing implementations with our clients and supporting them on this, we needed to be their change management partner. Many companies think, well, I've got a PMO, a project management office. They're going to handle this. But it's like, have you ever handled like some kind of transformation this large before? No, you probably haven't.
Right.
So you actually want to supplement your team with. Otherwise, I would generally have to increase the cost of doing business because there's contingency and there's risk associated with it. Otherwise, that can lessen if we were bringing that people in. And the other thing is the change needs to be led very much from the top. I think they make the decision, they sign off on, the check for, whatever it's being implemented or whatever change it is, and then they kind of step
Right.
away and leave it. But for some of
Yeah.
these larger scale transformation, they need to be seen leading consistently from the front. They need to be there, engaged, and having, to the extent that they can, transparent communications with the staff, because employees are worried about, what does this mean for me? Am I going to lose my
Right.
job? Like, how's this changing the way I work today? That kind. So those are things that need to be very much intentionally planned for and thoughtfully, with transparency, empathy, and authenticity communicated.
Yeah, no, there's no question about it. I mean, that's where leadership comes into these whole things. That's why so many of these things fail. It's like clash of two cultures, like slamming together. And you got all these personalities that you don't think about, who are, like you said, they're real people. They got real lives. They're worried about the things they normally worry about. And now they're worried about more, because they're like, well, am I going to keep my job? Am I going to like my job? Who am I going to work with? Who's this woman, Victoria? And who's this guy, Bob? And I don't work with them. And, they got all these reasons, which is what our minds do. It like sabotages us. So I think especially small business owners, talk about smaller acquisitions, they don't really think like leadership applies. I think we talked about this off the mic when we first met, that leadership applies like to small businesses and to small groups of people. It's probably more important, right? Because people can leave. They can just, screw this, whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's really good. What is it? Because I know you said you do a lot of speaking. What are the topics that you're speaking on in terms of
I have
their motivational stuff?
around 5 or 6 that I do.
Okay.
And so one of them is on resilience. One is on personal branding, and networking. One is around diversity, equity, and inclusion. I've been leading the teams like that for many, many years. I do one around the future of work, although I've changed the title because I actually talk about the future's here now. So how do we need to be leading very differently in business?
Yeah.
And then I have one that is the more inspirational one, where I talk through a little bit of my personal origin story and the adversity I had to overcome, combined with a career and life lessons with some actionable things they can take away from it. So that's the one I'm probably asked to deliver it almost the most. In fact, we've now hit International Women's Month with International Women's Day next week. And that's one of the busiest times of the year for me to go out and deliver that talk in particular.
Right. Well, I think people, they get motivated when they hear about, what things, because then it puts their life in perspective. Sometimes they're like, oh, I didn't have it so bad. What am I complaining about? I should be able to overcome this or that, that type of thing. But, it's funny. A lot of the people that I deal with and they speak, a lot of the stuff you're mentioning, do you think resilience was like a big term, like before the pandemic? I mean, clearly is now, because the whole world shut down. Some people just fell apart, other people were resilient, but were you speaking about it before then?
I was.
Yeah.
But I agree with you, Mitch. I think the pendulum swung much more so post-pandemic,
Right.
because we're also having more open conversations around mental health and well-being and burnout and all these things. So now that's created much more of a comfort around having the conversation.
Yeah. Why don't we do this? Let's take a few-minute break for commercials, sponsors. And then we'll come back. And I do want to talk more about what you said with regard to future of work. And because I think that creates a lot of stress. Like it did change in such a short period of time. It should have taken 15 years to happen what happened in 18 months. And I think it scared a lot of people. And I think a lot of them don't know. And we could talk about the younger generation. I'm really worried. I have a kid who's 23 years old and works from his bed in his house because he's a tech kid. He works for a technology company. They're in Minneapolis, and he doesn't go there. It's not always in his bed, but you know what I mean? He works from home. So I don't know what the future of our generation. So let's take a commercial, and then maybe you can calm my nerves about what I'm worried about with all this stuff, all right?
Here's a word from our sponsors.
Looking to market and grow your business? Or perhaps you're just getting started and want to hit the ground running? AWeber is the best choice for online email marketing and automation of your business. From maintaining a subscriber list to drip campaigns and landing pages, AWeber gives you tools and integrations that make marketing easy and fun. As our partner and sponsor, we use all their tools to promote the podcast
and market our law firm. AWeber, the best alternative for online marketing. For over 30 years, the Alternative Board, or TAB, has built a thriving community of forward-thinking CEOs and business owners who want to radically improve their companies. Through unique combinations of one-on-one business coaching, participation in monthly TAB board meetings with other non-competing owners, a suite of strategic tools, and customized strategic planning workshops, TAB membership can deliver greater strength to your business and a better work-life balance for you and your family. All packaged in a streamlined and affordable service that the people at TAB invite you to try risk-free. Are you struggling with managing advertising due to a lack of time or expertise? Perhaps you're facing challenges in scaling ads for your store. Are you feeling lost when strategies have no success? GSM Growth Agency is your reliable partner in overcoming these business challenges. Feel the impact of collaborating with a team dedicated not only to short-term goals, but also to building long-term partnerships and achieving sustained success. Embark on an exciting journey to redefine the possibilities of e-commerce and create a legacy of unparalleled excellence. Take decisive action now. Follow their link in the show notes to receive a complimentary audit of your Shopify store conducted by a GSM expert. Propel your e-commerce game to new heights with GSM Growth Agency. Follow the link in the show notes to learn more about all of our sponsors. And now back to our show.
All right, we're back. Thanks for your patience. What were we talking about? Yeah. Oh, my
Future of
concern about
work.
my kids. Yeah. So So
Yeah,
I'll let you
it's
comment. I won't even say anything. You comment on it.
yeah. Well, I'm concerned too, Mitch. So my kids,
Yeah.
both they will be. My older one turns 24 at the end of March, and the younger one will
Okay.
be 20 in June. So
Yeah. So I got two the same age and one who's 18 going to college. So
yeah, so I get it.
yeah.
So when we talk about the new ways of working, because the
Yeah.
future has hit us hard, and now it means a multitude of things. So let's start with where people work.
Yeah.
We're now having to adjust to the fact that people want to continue remote or at least have hybrid options going
Hybrid, I
forward.
think. Yeah.
And
At
many
least the healthier part of it, I think, is hybrid. Right.
I think healthy is hybrid, and so I'm really
Yeah.
disappointed when I see, and the industry leading it is financial services, who are demanding that people are back in the office. And I'm not talking about the tellers at the physical branches who need to be there. I'm
Right.
talking about the technologists or other people who are engaging predominantly through email, Zoom calls, etc. So for me,
Right.
I'm disappointed by those that are forcing a really aggressive return to a physical workspace, because I do think hybrid is the way to go. I'm also not a fan of full remote, which can be, again, some roles. There's exceptions, some roles,
Right.
because I think the relationships that get built, the networks
Yeah.
that we build that help our careers, and particularly for the young people, is important to do that in person. The collaboration
Yeah.
and
It's not healthy.
creativity and innovation happens
Yeah.
when we're together.
Right. It was a lot of I think it was both the New Jersey governor that went to the big financial companies here and said, hey, you got to get people coming back to work. We need people to pay for parking and use the transit authority and, get sandwiches at lunchtime and go for drinks. Like the whole economy is collapsing. We rely on all that stuff. But I also think that, if you're like our kids, 23, 24, you're out of school for a couple of years, you're working, that's how you socialize. You go to work, right? You grab coffee with somebody, you get drinks after work with your friends, people that you meet, and that's how you do it. So he's very good about it. He's got to get out to the gym and he goes and sees his friends, but he has to do it. We didn't have to be proactive, is what I'm saying. Now maybe that just makes us lazy, but that's what I worry about. That the cities are going to be empty, right? And people are going to be living on the outskirts and not seeing each other, and they stand behind their phones anyway, their age,
Very true. So
yeah. So what have you heard in the corporate world?
So there's where people work,
Right.
That the physical spaces people work, but there's who do people work for? So this is where something the pandemic also really moved the needle on, in that not only did consumers want to buy from it, but employees want to work for companies that align to their purpose and their values. And
Right.
and subsequently, employees also want to work for leaders that they
Right.
trust, and they believe are supporting their career advancement, which is very different. So, in my parents' generation and maybe the early part of mine, I was looking for stability, and from a work perspective meant one thing. And this newer generation, the way they look at are you creating stability for me is by investing in my skills. And so this is
Right.
that moves sort of well, actually, before I move to kind of skills, so the who do we work for? The other thing is the leaders themselves, and people want to work for. My phrase, actually, in the third book that will be coming out later this year, is around whole human leadership. Want to work
Yeah.
for a very different kind of leader who's more vulnerable, more empathetic, who's transparent in their communications. Doesn't mean they're not holding them accountable for performance, but leading and
Right.
recognize we're whole humans that show up every day. Then
Yeah.
the
So
next thing
does
is,
that lead to companies, before you move on,
yeah,
needing to kind of brand themselves for employees, like, who you are as a company to attract the right kind of employees? It's not the other way around. Oh, we're a company, you come work for us. I think a lot of these younger people are like, well, I think they need me more than I need them.
yeah, they're well, that's a
I'm not
generational
saying
thing
you
too.
should think that. I'm just saying that's what
Yeah,
they do.
no, but there is some truth in what you're saying, Mitch. And so there is actually a whole effort. You'll hear a lot about employee branding. And so I spent a lot of time with like chief human resource or chief people officers talking about the the challenge in finding talent. And I said, this isn't an HR problem alone to solve. I said, you need to be working with
Right.
marketing to
Yeah.
build, much like you're trying to attract customers, you need to do that for your
Right.
employees. And it's
Place where they want to be.
and so, yeah, so there's a lot of work that needs to be done around that. I will say something on the generational piece, and this is also where it's really tough for leaders. One, our children's generation are going to be the first en masse that don't do as well as their parents, and a
Right.
lot of that has to do with let's talk about resilience again. I mean, these are the kids that all got like ribbons and medals just for showing up, and they have they have expectations that they're going to rise. And well, I've been here. I'm like, no, you actually really do. You have to have skill. You have, and
Right.
I say you also need potential. So that also comes with attitude, but you actually have to have experience. You have to have some like diversity,
Yeah.
to be able, and by diversity, I mean, that's not all, I'm not even talking just lived experience that needs to come to
Yeah.
the table. And so
Right.
there's some expectation setting, that as leaders, we need to do with the different generations, but still keeping them motivated. So that in
Right.
itself,
Yeah.
again,
They
I
want to
think,
skip steps that you can't skip.
yeah,
They want to be,
exactly.
top of. Yeah. They want. Well, why can't I be level 14? Well, because you haven't been here for 14 years. And what are you talking about? I know that better than he does. They don't.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. I mean, maybe I'm overreacting. I just think it's a real problem for future generations. Like, you're right. I think our generation, like, I'm about making what my dad did 20 or 30 years ago, and inflation adjusted, whatever. And now our kids are going to be making less. Maybe they'll be renters. Maybe they won't be buying homes anymore. I don't know what's going to happen. But I think that the work from a mental health perspective, I think that, all our kids are in therapy, right? Everybody goes for this or that, which is good. It's good to talk to people. Not, when we were younger, it was like, suck it up, whatever, cry a little bit and move on. Like, that's kind of the way we were raised. So that all, I think, is healthy. But the work and life, there's no balance. It's all merged on each other, right? You're working and living at the same time. You're working, jumping on a call at 8 o'clock because you get your kids at school at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and they don't get out of your life. You never decompress, you never go home. And so I got clients email me on the weekends. I guess they think I'm going to get back to them. I don't, but this is an emergency. I breathe on the weekends, but whatever. Send me an email at 11 o'clock at night. I'm not going to respond,
Well, I think that's,
but they do. Yeah.
well, that's a choice. So well, no, sorry. Let's come right back to that, because I have some like real thoughts on that. The last thing I'll say
Good.
when we think about just the ways of working now is around
Mm-hmm.
skill and the way we need to be thinking. And so the whole gig economy is very real, and we need to be looking at our workforce in a very different way. And the role of the HR business partner needs to be very much the strategic advisor to the business leader, in where you look at the strategy of the business. Where do you want to grow to? What new market, new product, new service do you want to get into in your, like, and as you're building out your 1, your 3, your 5-year plan? So that's going to mean changes in the way we work and the skills that are going to be required to do that. And so then you
Right.
need to do this assessment of your workforce, and then figure out, how are you going to build towards that skill? Are you going to be able to buy it. Maybe it doesn't exist or in enough quantity. You talked about AI, it's everywhere. So
Yeah.
are you going to buy the talent? Are you going to try and build it? So, training people from within. Are you borrowing it temporarily if it's project based, looking at contingent workers? What do you automate to get to that point? So you need to go through this exercise, and the shelf life of skills itself, particularly technology, but all skills, is reduced to right now on average less than 2 years before they're
Is it?
cycling around. So we need to be consistently investing in that. And this is also where I tell employees and my own children, like, you need to be, you're the CEO of your career. Like, do not think that your leader or company is going to do that for you. A good one should
No
be
way.
helping you with that, but you're in charge of that.
Right. Yeah.
And so let's move on to time. So I do believe in work-life integration. I hate when people ask me, like, how do you do it all? How do you balance? And I'm like, ugh, you can have it all, not without
Yeah.
compromise and trade-offs. And at some point it's going to be, towards your career, and other times it's going to be for your family, for your health, for whatever other reasons that you have. And so for me, I've had a saying from I have two sayings that I'll share. One is, I've told my team, there are no schedules, there's just deliverables. So pre-pandemic, even back then, you never, even not in a formal, like, remote environment, if you wanted to work a day from home, fine. You didn't need to ask me to take off early to go take a child or parent to a doctor's appointment or kids to soccer games. You just didn't. We have commitments
Just
to
get the
one
job
another
done.
and to our customers. So,
Yeah.
and then the other thing I'll say is, saying I have is, where there's conviction, there's capacity. I do not buy, like, I hear it all the time around fitness, and I am a fitness fanatic.
Right. No, it's a good example.
Don't say there's no time to exercise. Are you
Right. No.
Netflixing all night, and therefore
Of
you're not
course.
getting up early to go to the gym? Like, so I believe
Right.
if you have conviction around something, you will create the capacity.
There's
And
no
last thing
one
I
who
will say, Mitch, is I'm very different from you, in that I'm always on. Although I have to tell my team, do as I say, not as I do. If you want to take the weekend off, like, whatever, when I come back from vacation, I don't want to come back to 1,000 emails. So I will have checked them while I'm away. My choice.
Yeah.
I'm
I'm like in between that. Like, I don't want to come back to 400 emails in my inbox. So I do look at that when I'm away. But if it's something that really needs attention, I'll say, listen, I'm out of town this week. Can I deal with it Monday? And then I'll snooze the email or something like that. Now, of course, I get 50 emails that pop up I got to deal with. But yeah, I'm a, look, my wife keeps the phone by the bed. I leave it in the kitchen. I'm not a, but you're right. It's a choice. But I need some peace in my life at some point. I just want to I got to turn it off. And my kids are, that their generation is always plugged in, always on. It's always going. They're always thinking. Probably makes all of them a little ADHD because of the cerebral, right? Stimulation constantly. But I think that, that's the kind of stuff, like, people have to learn that that's a choice. Like, it's okay unless it's really affecting your health. It's okay for you to do it the way you want to do it, Victoria, and you're balancing that. And your team doesn't have to do that if it makes them crazy.
Yeah.
And they're out of their mind. They can't even sleep at night. That's not what you want them to do, right? So I think we've gotten to the point where, or our generation, because we're adults, we're like equipped with these skills, right? To be able to say, okay, I do it this way and I'm able to make choices. But if you're young, I think you're right. There's like, well, why isn't this company doing this for me? And why isn't this happening? And so forth. And I think it's a learned skill set that kids have to figure out a little bit. Maybe they need guidance. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah. So what were you were saying something that I was going to say something. Said, no, wait, let me go back to this. I don't remember what we were talking about.
I don't know, skills and.
Yeah, it was about skills. I just think that when it comes to and we can kind of bring this back to small business and entrepreneurs and stuff. We don't have to be stuck in the corporate world the whole time. I think that a lot of business owners, I was just talking to somebody before or yesterday, they've grown and sold like 6 or 7 businesses, all of which are completely unrelated industries. And I think that a lot of people don't like do things that are fundamental that they can do. And that's what I think, like, a lot of the young people, they don't realize what their capacity is. They don't realize what their commitment can be. I know what I was going to say before. You were talking about that commitment gives you capacity. There's nobody that you know that if they really want to do something, they figure it out. I mean, you know, if they really want to go to that concert or they really want to do this or they really want to buy this, they magically find the money and the time. It's like a, you know, and that happens consistently in life. So yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with, you know, commitment to what and conviction to what you want to do. You can do it. I mean, you started when you were, you know, what'd you say, 11?
11.
I'm not suggesting everyone should be like, oh my God, I'm 19. I'm like 8 years behind Victoria. But, you know, some of it's circumstance, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that you can do a lot more than you give yourself credit for. And I think that business owners, and I see this, I've been doing this 5 years, I've been practicing 30 plus years. You can be more successful if you just take the time to learn to deal with fundamentals, you know, to learn to be a good leader, to learn to, you know, be strategic about how you grow your business or what your business is and what you're doing. And I think that, I don't know how you do things, but I think a lot of people just kind of wing it, you know, like they don't take the time to read your book or learn from this person or hear this speech or, you know, and, you know, whatever. And I guess, and some of it's mindset, right? You mentioned unstoppable. Is that the logo I should use for your social
Yeah,
media
yeah.
posting?
Unstoppable. Yeah, it's very much my like mantra and philosophy of life. And um so I don't know. I think I find a lot of people create excuses doing um the tough stuff, whether it's, you know, like I said, I'll use that on a fitness journey or whatever. Like it requires operating with intention. I think about a big
Yeah.
but some of that too, it comes, I think this a significant part of this is around self-awareness and doing a lot of reflection. So when we think about like your business owners that'll be here, um, like what are you? They've come up with this great idea. You've got and you have this business. I
Right.
fundamentally I think you need to be a good leader, but then it's also around things like what's your superpower? And
Right. What are you
understanding
good at? What are
deeply
you not good at?
what
Right.
so are you familiar with the Japanese philosophy of ikigai? And
No.
it's like a Venn diagram with multiple circles, but it's around,
Okay.
you know, what you're skilled at, what you enjoy doing, what you can get paid to do. And there's others. Those are the three most important, I think. So like finding what
Okay.
that mix is. And so this is your business, but much like I have I say I don't like to do things that don't bring me personal joy or value. And I will either say no, I delegate or I outsource. And then think about it, even
Right.
as a business owner, like there's some things you're not good at. And this is where I find it. I've done a lot of like coaching with like startup founders. Like they feel in large part because
Hmm.
they don't have tons of capital that they have to do it all. Well, no, like you're going to fail if you
Right.
do that. And there's whole systems, and
Yeah.
this is why I like the likes of Fiverr and Upwork, where you can do things for cheap, like with people who love doing those things. Like figure what that is, but you need to be really reflective and honest with yourself, or find people who are going to be radically candid with you and tell you the truth, to figure out which of those things you do and which you find
Yeah.
others to help you with, and where you need to improve.
Yeah. No, I always say there's like four major parts of a business or strategic plan, right? There's your product and service, but 1/4 of it is people, you people, and things you shouldn't be or not capable of doing. So either you shouldn't be doing this business, you're not the person who should be doing this business. You can get somebody to do some of the things that you shouldn't be doing or can't do or whatever. Or maybe you shouldn't be doing it at all because, you know, you can be the person outside. If you got the
Yeah.
capital, you got access to money, fine. You don't have to work in the business. And I think that you're right. We feel like we got to do it all. I mean, look, I'm a lawyer. I feel the same way, right? I can't outsource my professional skills, right? But I can outsource things that are $20 an hour work that I shouldn't be doing. If I'm charging
Yeah.
$500 an hour, that's like ridiculous. But people do it. You know, well, I'm also the janitor and I'm the president. Okay, well, that's not great. I mean, I have to do that for a little while, but that's not the goal, right? It's to build it up. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you mentioned before about selling, you know, exiting businesses. So when you get involved in like small businesses or you make a purchase or you start a business, do you have that in mind? Like, okay, I'm going to do this, but where does it take me to, like, is there going to be an exit strategy or anything, or you don't really think about that till later on?
Oh, I often do. So I didn't when I bought the casting agency initially.
Okay.
But again,
Okay.
20 years old, it was my first, foray
Right.
into entrepreneurship. When I built the second business, it was out of passion, and then it grew. And at one point, it got to a point where I couldn't. It wasn't. It was profitable, but not at it. The amount of effort was pretty great, and I was fairly senior and doing a significant amount of travel. So I exited that business. When I bought
Okay.
the data and analytics technology company, I very much approached it with that in mind. But that was the last of the acquisitions I personally have done. And then for the companies I work for, um, we're doing it to integrate and looking at synergies. So we're not necessarily exiting. But for the startups that I'm,
Mhm.
working with, and I've sat on the board of a fintech. I really shaped its
Sure.
strategy initially for the last 6 years, and that has very much been. We actually should have exited already, to be honest. Should have been a transaction, and
Uh-huh.
that had to do a little bit more with the leadership of that, and why I'm no longer on the board. Um, a- and I hope to see my equity at some point. But I look at it, and I'm stepping into a new CEO role shortly through a large.
Uh-huh.
It's a portfolio company, and that was one of the questions I asked the head of the portfolio company is what's there. It's not a private equity firm. They don't have the same kind of push that institutional investors do have in PE, but like, what's the plan?
Right.
Because for me, it's 3 to 5 years. We grow and
Yeah.
scale it
Well,
to the
that's
size,
a PE. Right.
and
That's what
but
PEs do,
yeah,
right?
yes. So I do spend a lot of time. I want us to be thinking about like, where are we getting to? I actually have a good friend of mine, and he owns a like technology services company, and I remember saying to him like, I was helping a little. He's the technologist and more the sales. Actually, no, he's not a tech. He's the sales guy, and I was trying to coach him on his leadership and I said, I'm going to give you two very different directions, but you need to tell me where you're going in the business. Are you growing it from this to here and you're selling it?
Yeah.
Or are you just growing it to keep it and you run it as the CEO and do all your other investing over here? Like very different strategies. So I really do think you need to be thinking about some of those things as you then make plans for investment or growth or other strategies within the business.
Right. Well, especially if you're a small business owner, you can get trapped in your business because you can end up being 55, 60, 65 years old and you haven't built any value and you don't really have anything to quote unquote sell, you know, besides relationships, which are sometimes hard to transfer. You have a lot
Hmm.
of faith in the relationships you've built. That doesn't mean that they're going to jump to your friend who you've been working with all this time when
Yeah.
you take over the business. So yeah, so I think a lot of that's very well. That's good. Did you sell the casting agency, the first company you ever bought,
I
or
did.
did
I
you
ended
just?
up I actually had brought in, I was working full time when I bought it. So I actually brought someone in to do more of the day to day. Another lesson, I brought in someone that was a friend. As they say, it's never wise to do that. But I brought her in
Right.
to run it. I had gotten relocated cross country and so was managing it remotely. And ultimately, there were some just challenges in how we operated anyways. And so then I sold her the business.
I sold her the business.
Yeah.
You sold it to her? Yeah.
Yes.
I somebody just asked me that yesterday. Like, should I was on a podcast, my friend Dan Gordon, the Badass Entrepreneur podcast, I think it was, something like that. And so we were talking, and he said, so what you're saying is you should never do business with friends, be in business with a friend. I said, no, I'm not saying that. I'm saying you have to be more cautious, even with your spouse. If you're in business with your spouse, you better be more cautious because you can
Yeah.
destroy your business and your relationship all in one swoop, right? So, because a lot of things that I write about my book and things like that, they're about, putting things in writing. Like our mind is not like this organized file cabinet for most people. It's a box with sticky notes, and the sticky notes are stuck to the wrong things, and we don't remember things, right? And all this type of stuff. So whatever you think our agreement was, whatever I think our agreement was, we're both going to be wrong. It's going to be wrong. So
Yeah.
if you're going to do business with somebody that you better make sure you have things very well documented, rules, regulations, operating agreements, things like that you communicate carefully, and it might blow up your relationship. I mean, it's always a risk, but
I think,
I
yeah.
always say, would you rather do people with somebody you don't trust and totally you don't know and you just hired them and you're just like, well, I don't know this person, but they have a great resume, or somebody who you think has your back, somebody who you think if things really got bad, you can rely on them. And I'm not saying that communication wouldn't be misunderstood, but it's a double-edged sword.
Yeah, yeah, it is for sure. And I've hired people I know or I'm friends with subsequently since that first learning
Yeah,
experience at 20. So I'm
didn't
not saying
burn you forever.
no, no.
All right, so tell me like how people can. I assume your books are on Amazon, right? Like the
They
rest
are.
of the world. And what's the best way for them to interact with you, on LinkedIn or Instagram or Facebook or your website?
I'm on all of those places, but the best place, honestly, Mitch, is probably my website. It's the one-stop shop. The books and the book link to take you to Amazon are there.
Okay.
I publish some of the podcasts I'm on there, some of the content
Okay.
that I write, my keynote speeches, but it also will allow people just to click the button to connect with me on whatever their preferred social media platform is. Except, as my younger one tells me that I'm so old because I'm still on Facebook, I'm not on Snapchat and I'm not on TikTok, but you can find me on all the other, almost all the other ones.
Yeah, I'm not on those. I've been like toying with TikTok. I'm not sure what I'm going to do, but definitely not Snapchat. Yeah. All
No,
right. So
some
we'll put all
good filters, but I'm
Yeah.
not playing on there.
Exactly. All right. So we'll put all those links in the show notes. And as tired as I'm sure that you are, I appreciate you coming on with me and talking and, sharing all this stuff's really important. And I think that people, if they keep talking about it, I think that it, will make for a better tomorrow. If we just kind of go with the flow and let all the kids work from home for the next 20 or 30 years, I think we're going to be in a lot of trouble. So
Yeah.
I appreciate it. I really do.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Accidental Entrepreneur. Opening and closing music written and performed by Howie Moskovich and made to order music. For information about Howie and his music services, please follow the link in our show notes. If you like the podcast, please tell others about us. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, on Amazon Music, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and most of the other podcast directories. If you like what you hear, please leave us a 5-star review and feel free to share our episodes on social media. If you have any questions or comments, ideas for the show, or you'd even like to appear as a guest, reach out to us by email at info@beinhakerlaw.com.
The Accidental Entrepreneur is hosted by Mitch Beinhaker and produced by Beinhaker Law. If you'd like to learn more about our business and legal services, you can find us on social media or visit our website at beinhakerlaw.com. Thanks for listening, and be sure to subscribe to our feed to be notified of all future episodes.